Good evening, everybody. Welcome along to our tasting tonight. It's not our usual blether, so don't adjust your sets, your TVs or calendars if you think that you're seeing me on Facebook and YouTube on a Wednesday night instead of a Thursday. So we are meant to be here, and we are doing a tasting or kind of a look at some of the GlenAllachie's wood range, wood finish range. So hopefully you have your kit that you managed to get from us. If you don't have the kit, fear not. I'm sure you'll have a great whiskey sitting within arm's reach that you can grab and pour and enjoy alongside us. All the whiskies we have tonight are still available from the shop, so if you like the sound of one, please do jump on the website. I'll be popping up links to each dram as we go through the evening. So thanks, Dominic. Yes, it's a very suitable GlenAllachie t-shirt tonight. I dug it out especially, and hopefully you can't see the creases in there. We'll be enjoying some fine GlenAllachie tonight. So we are actually streaming on YouTube as well as Facebook. So if you're watching and commenting or answering questions, or Ronan's answering questions from a comment that you can't see, it's probably because it's on one of the other channels that we're viewing on. So without further ado, let's welcome Ronan into the room. Good evening.
Hi, how are you doing?
Very well, Ronan. Thank you very much. Yeah, and yourself?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. A nice evening for drinking whiskey.
It is. Yeah, I think it's been the best day of the year so far, to be honest.
It's a couple of good few days.
Yeah. We haven't seen many like the picture behind us in a while. Anyway.
No, that's true. That was a one-off. We seen the opportunity and we took it.
Great stuff. Just Dominic, who's on YouTube, just asking for the running order. So quickly, guys, the running order as per the pack that we sent out. We've got the 12-year-old from the core range. So Ronan, you might be able to guide. I've just done it in kind of age order. The 7-year-old Hungarian, the 8-year-old Scottish, and then the 10-year-old Spanish. But you might think flavor-wise, there might be a better way to go.
That's actually the way I've laid them out as well. That's the way I would taste through them. Not because of age, but yeah, the sort of flavour profile that we'd run in that order.
Perfect. Great stuff. And then we've got the 10-year-old Cask strength batch 9 and finishing with the batch 2 of the 10-year-old MacNairs. So guys, we are going to focus really on the 3 Virgin Oaks tonight. That's kind of what we want to talk about because they're the most interesting. They're the ones that are kind of really quite new to us. So feel free, pour yourself that 12-year-old. If you know GlenAllachie, you'll probably know the 12-year-old whiskey. But Ronan, do you want to just give us a little bit about the 12 for the guys who maybe don't know too much about GlenAllachie?
So the 12-year-old GlenAllachie was really the first sort of core range age statement bottling that we actually came out with at the distillery from when Billy Walker, Tristan Savage and Graham Stevenson acquired the distillery in 2017. So it's been a mainstay of our range and it's developed over the years. And it's a whiskey we're very, very proud of. And we think it's one that sort of perfectly describes or introduces you to what we do at GlenAllachie. It's 46%. It's non-chill filtered. We haven't added any colour. And it's a combination of Pedro Jimenez and Oloroso sherry, a small amount of American Virgin Oak, and then a little bit of Rioja red wine as well. It's a whiskey really that I would say is one you can drink all the time within moderation. It's got everything that, for me, GlenAllachie is sort of starting to be known for. Lots of fruit, butterscotch, cinnamon, ginger in there as well. Quite sweet, well balanced, really easy to drink. Yeah, it sort of perfectly describes what we're doing.
Yeah. It's got that kind of, for me, and I find it in most GlenAllachie, certainly, maybe out with some of the wood ranges, but that toffee apple kind of note as well that I find come through quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whiskey that's constantly developed. For people that have followed GlenAllachie since the 12-year-old's been released, Well, I've noticed that, say, the intensity of the Pedro Jimenez and the Oloroso have got more and more apparent, and that's through quite a labour-intensive re-racking process. If anyone watching or listening has been to the distillery and met and spoke with Lindsay, he's an incredible person that pretty much knows where every cask is in the warehouse and knows everything about the wood that we're maturing in. And as we have control of the spirit for longer, as we're able to put our little touch on it in terms of sort of second maturation, the development of GlenAllachie, the 12-year-old in particular, has gone on leaps and bounds through the years, being predominantly more sherry orientated. And like it's a GlenAllachie spirit. The base is quite honeyed butterscotch, very thick, very juicy, and using first fill PX and Oloroso hogsheads, getting a lot more wood contact than traditional you would get in sort of puncheons or butts with sherry casks, produces a really fruit-driven chocolate, orange peel, that toffee apple, that sweet stickiness in there as well. And it's a everyday drinking whiskey for me anyway.
I mean, it's part of the job, really, though, isn't it?
What's constant reevaluating the stock and making sure that everything is still of the highest quality. That's what I try and claim it as. But yeah, it's always good. And when we venture into speaking about the Virgin Oaks, it is always good to come back to something like the 12-year-old and sort of rebasing yourself on what the flavour direction of the overall distillery is moving in. And we do these small experiment things that really pique our interests and hopefully piques everybody else's interests. But the 12-year-old is our bread and butter, if you would. It's the one that we think should perfectly describe the distillery and the character and really describe what we're doing.
Yeah. I think it's important to do that, is it? In that, because Billy's now, or GlenAllachie, are no longer selling private casks, are they? As part of GlenAllachie. I know there's a lot of independent GlenAllachie out there already. So is that part of the idea of keeping this experiment, keeping this interest going within the distillery range?
Well, yeah, you're right. From 2017 onwards, we stopped supplying the blended market. We stopped supplying independent bottlers, and we stopped selling casks privately to private individuals. And that was mostly because if you sort of look at GlenAllachie as a whole, starting in the 60s, predominantly a distillery that has supplied the blended market. A lot of independent bottlers have casks of GlenAllachie, and there was never really a sort of nailed down distinctive, this is the distillery style, this is what it produces, and then any independent bottling of it is a variation that an independent bottler has been able to put their own twist onto. So when we were establishing GlenAllachie and that core characteristic, that DNA, that we wanted then to release a single malt brand, it was important to us that, one, we have full control of the spirit and what we're doing with it, and we grow that brand or that whiskey, that DNA, to be what we want it to be, and not let, say, stuff that we've sold be not modified, but moved in a different direction by an independent bottler and maybe clouding the message that we're trying to put out at the distillery. Obviously, independent bottlers still hold stock of GlenAllachie, and most of the GlenAllachie, if not all of the GlenAllachie that comes out from independent bottlers, is very, very good. But it's not, it's easier for us to hold the spirit and work with the spirit and make sure it's going in the direction we want than selling it off to someone else.
Yeah. And is that kind of the premise for the future as well? Even though when you've got that kind of full idea of what's happening with GlenAllachie, is that maybe something you might look back on and say, well, maybe we can allocate some stock for independence, or do you think it's all going to be an in-house?
So when Billy acquired the distillery in 2017, we massively reduced our production output. So we were a distillery that can produce between 4.2 million litres a year, and we've reduced that down to around 700, 750. So there's less of what people would say is Billy Walker's GlenAllachie to sell to third parties, and it's quite different from what we inherited from Chivas, etc. So yeah, that's probably not a policy will change. I don't think Billy's got no appetite to do it. I can't imagine we'll have an appetite to do it, because we'll have less spirit to deal with. So yeah, it's not in the plans, and it's good to hold on to your own stock and be able to work with it all, and yeah, be able to move it down different profiles or characteristics depending on cask maturation. Yeah, it's better to have it than to look at someone else doing it.
Yeah, I fully understand that. And as you say, there is still GlenAllachie out there on the independent market, which is great, because I think as a whiskey fan, many distilleries just have that core range, don't they? The 12, the 15, the 18 don't really diverse too much from it. Whereas GlenAllachie, you guys are always kind of experimenting. You're always bringing out new things to pique an interest and keep people enthused about the distillery. And the Virgin Oak, which we'll go on to, is one of these ranges, and the wood finish, and then your single cask. So there's always something new, isn't there? So,
well, we're always playing about with stuff. I guess we're always looking at different casks, either virgin or had previously holding some form of liquid to see how it influences GlenAllachie. As I said, GlenAllachie was a spirit that went into a Ballantine Chivas Regal blends. It's a big, versatile spirit.
Definitely.
And I sort of look the sort of experimentation we do with virgin oaks or different sherry styles or different wines, different fortified wines, is a sort of connection, I guess, to that sort of, we have a versatile spirit. It's very interesting from my point of view to see how it adapts and how it interacts with these different wood types and sort of flavors that it picks up. Sort of using the fact that it is a big sort of viscous, thick, juicy spirit that can work very well in different wood types as well. And yeah, the virgin oak falling under the sort of umbrella of sort of wood finishes is that sort of look into unique, quite interesting genuses of oak and what sort of flavour they impart onto the spirit. And when they've got a relatively similar first maturation sort of life cycle, and then the only difference is 18 to 36 months in a different virgin oak and the different flavours you pick up, or whether that be different sherry styles or different wine styles, these things really pique Billy's interests in sort of the maturation side of things. And as an independent distillery owned by our blender or master blender, these things are fun, and we can just do whatever we want as long as much as we want, really.
Yeah, it must be the envy of quite a lot of distillers and blenders having that freedom. You get people who, and a lot of guys, I suppose Billy started it now by making GlenAllachie this fantastic single malt. But these guys are kind of custodians of a brand or a spirit that is very much, they'll probably put their own stamp on it, but very much appealing to that customers who have been buying that brand for such a long time, having that freedom to diverse from that, and it was it's exciting. It's great fun, and you're one of the only distilleries who are still independently owned. So,
well, look, it's absolutely brilliant fun, and as the sort of popularity of the brand, people drink more and more GlenAllachie. It's exciting. Look, we're a distillery built in the 60s, but essentially we're a 6-year-old single malt brand. In that sense, you sort of get the best of both worlds. With the warehouses with older vintage stock that we're able to come out and release, with the ability to change up our processes so that we can produce a slightly different single malt moving forward, and we're able to sort of delve into the far corners of the world and pick up different virgin oaks or different wines, different sherries from Spain, obviously, but different wines and such that we can play about with. And like sometimes we get it right in the way it's meant, we thought it would go, and sometimes we get it slightly wrong, and that's the fun of it.
Superb. And I'm just going to plug my charger in there. So we've got a couple of questions from Ian and Dominic on YouTube. Before we jump into the questions, we're going to start the 7-year-old. So the 7-year-old Hungarian Oak. So the full range, 48%. So guys, if you're listening to Ronan there, the suggestion for you, keep a hold of the 12-year-old. Don't just drink it all before we move on. and use that to go back to as a kind of palate cleanser between the next three whiskies, and that'll bring us back to the core of GlenAllachie, and it'll highlight the differences in the next three drams. Admittedly, I had a casualty with my Spanish 10-year-old. We have man down, and he is now swept up in a dustpan, unfortunately. So I don't have the 10-year-old, but I do have the other two. So you guys at home can tell me all about your thoughts, and please do feel free to put any comments on the next drams that we've got. So, Ronan, can you tell us a little bit about the Hungarian Oak, and then we'll jump into the questions that are coming through.
Sure. And I would, for the Hungarian, the Scottish, and the Spanish, if you have the restraint and as possible, to try and leave a little between, so you can sort of jump back from the Scottish to the Hungarian, so you can sort of try and pick up the slight differences in what the genus of oak and sort of where the oak is grown has influenced the flavour, and the same with the Spanish as well. And that'll really show you the not the point we're making, but the fact that where the tree is grown and then maturing the spirit has a different effect on what is in essence a starting level, which is very, very similar. So 48% the Hungarian oak, 7 years old. It is matured in American oak ex-bourbon barrels for what would be 6.5 years, and then finished in virgin Hungarian oak. It's went from what you would say is Quercus alba, or white oak, into Quercus petrea, which is grown in the Zemplin forest in northeast Hungary. Look, this is something we're very excited by. Marketing will tell me we're one of the first to release something in virgin Hungarian oak. I'm accepting to be corrected on that, but to use virgin Hungarian oak is very, very exciting. Produces a lot of flavours into the spirit of lots of milk chocolate, heightens that butterscotch and sort of cinnamon and ginger, especially on the nose, I find. A little bit of a raisin note and some orchard fruits in there as well.
You're certainly picking up that base bourbon cask, aren't you? You're getting that kind of caramels and toffee in there, certainly.
Well, and we're not trying to use the virgin oak cask to mask the previous life of the spirit. It's to help grow, it's to build upon, it's to add to. It's the reason we use it is to extract interesting flavors from the wood that can add to the sort of spirit that we've already got. And the Hungarian is one that we're very, very excited by, and it is a whiskey that, like a virgin oak cask, you need to monitor quite closely. Since the casks arrived, we have monitored very, very closely. Very unusual to mature in first fill virgins Hungarian, so we thought we need to watch these to make sure that the maturation process is moving in the direction that we thought it would, or we expected it to.
There is, there's a wee bit of again, it's probably, you mentioned raisins there, and it's almost like a refill sherry cask. Just that little bit of spice, but not it's nowhere near a sherry bomb, but it's got that kind of cinnamony nutmeg kind of note on the nose.
It's started to move in that direction where these, especially on the nose, the sort of orange peel or cinnamon, sort of peppery spiciness starts coming through. And Billy will always say that we're always trying to reach a sweet spot when it comes to the maturation, and that we'll bottle it when we think it's at its sweetest point, at its peak. Obviously, through experience, you know that is it going to get any better, and you sort of hope that is it, and but you need to just be confident in yourself that this is the sweetest point. And look, it's 7 years old. We released a 4-year-old last year. We don't really shy away from releasing younger whiskies based that we just think if a whiskey is ready, if we think it's reached that sweetest point, then we're more than willing to release it, because you don't really drink the number on the label if you drink the spirit. So when we tasted this and we started putting pilots together, traditionally we start putting what we would call pilot samples together. we'll take around 100, 200 mils of that cask type, and what we will put into the bottling. We bring it into the lab and we vat it together, or blend it together, if you would, and then we'll reduce down to 50.5, and we'll try cask strength, and we'll reduce it to 50.5, and then we'll reduce it to about 48, 48.5, and we'll sample and we'll see what ABV we think this is correct at, and if we think it's good enough to bottle. And you can sort of see with Billy when he thinks a whiskey's good to go, you can sort of tell, you can sort of see that, yes, this slight experiment, but with experience and sort of know-how in the background, that, yeah, this is ready to go and produce quite brilliant whiskies, in a slightly biased opinion. But yeah, the Hungarian Oak is fascinating, and it's not on the path which GlenAllachie you would associate now in being obviously mostly sherry matured. It is a slight deviant away from that, which we think is very good, because again, as I said before, it sort of shows that versatility of the spirit and our sort of fascination with using quite different virgin oak styles as well.
Sure. The going back to last year, you had a very similar chat with Russell and Kat about the range of virgin oak that was out then, and I remember one of the stories where Russell was asking, learning under Billy, how do you know what liquid to put in what cask? And you said that Billy just told you experience.
Yeah, so that it's quite good that my chat hasn't changed in a year, and also Billy's chat hasn't changed in a year. Then it's yeah. I
was going to ask you, you're a year further down the line, doing and you're obviously heavily involved in the blending side of things, or the selection side of things as well. Have you learned that experience yet? Are you still?
I think I'm about 51 years of that. And if I can be half as good as Billy, I'll be doing all right. Yeah, that is his answer. It is experience. Yeah, the only way to get experience is time, I guess. But yeah, it's been a fun year, fascinating year, working with all these different cask types and such, and seeing the sort of stuff we looked at a couple of years ago when I started sort of working more closely on the blending side of things with Billy, to sampling them now. Or when we first looked at the GlenAllachie 4-year-old peated, it was 3 years old, and seeing how it's matured in a year and then being able to release it and such. It's experience is still the answer. And 50 odd years to go.
I'm sure you'll get there. We're seeing a great wave of kind of guys like yourself, Ian Forteeth, Dean Joe, and so many young blenders coming through and really working some magic. We've also had the older guard, guys like Billy, David Stewart, Jim McEwen, these kind of guys. And a lot of the general talk we have is we're losing these characters, or these kind of guys are coming to the end. Mm-hmm. Every distillery must have a contingency plan or a backup plan. Obviously, yourself working with Billy with the key to kind of eventually take on that role. What's the thought on basic? What I'm trying to ask is, the pressure is obviously there. GlenAllachie is a fantastic spirit. Billy is obviously worshipped by many guys across the world in terms of the whiskey. Mm-hmm. It's what do you feel of the new wave of these guys coming through? How open are people who meet you at tastings? How keen are they to speak to you and they chat about the whiskies and your vision for what's coming up?
I don't think anyone's ever keen to speak to me. I'd like to think I'm a fairly low-key, boring individual. But I don't really know. I suppose that you would say there are less characters in the industry, I guess, but what does that really mean? These guys have been doing it. People have been doing it for so long that, yeah, they've got a aura or rock star sort of opinion from people. But yeah, I know Ian, I know Dean, I know Scott at Tomatin as well, and these are all great guys that a lot of the time we in the earlier days we would have been at whiskey festivals around Europe and stuff together, pouring samples and too many late nights. So yeah, it's fascinating. Like it's fascinating being on this side, as in the sort of blending side of things, and looking at what we're doing in GlenAllachie from a slightly different angle. But yeah, in terms of contingency plans or future plans, you'd have to ask Billy about that one. I can't.
Sure.
I'm not gonna comment on that.
I guess you guys are all similar age and grew up as you've all been brand ambassadors, and you all kind of stepped into that blending role.
I might not look it, but I think they're all older than me. But yeah, I guess we've all sort of moved in. It's fun seeing that, like, get on with, especially Scott Adamson. He's a good pal, and it's good to see him doing well at his role within Tomatin and Cabochon and stuff. Yeah, it's good. He probably looks at me and thinks, "What a jammy bugger," which is But yeah,
you probably look at yourself and think that too.
I try not to look at myself. That's the issue.
Good stuff. Right, let's get to the guys online. Ian has asked, has the longer fermentation time started to show their effect on the new make spirit? Must allow for some additional secondary fermentation with the conditions maybe can contribute in.
Yeah, I mean the what will be 4 or 5 years old spirit now with the longer fermentation up to 160 hours. What we taste the new make every week when we're at the distillery, and it's been made that week, and it's absolutely brilliant. If you could bottle it and sell it, then you would. And and the stuff that's sitting in wood just now is moving in the direction that I think Billy thought it would move in, which is obviously a good thing. And it's really, really good, and it's really, really exciting. And I think you can sort of see that, although it was a peated version of it, when you look at the 4-year-olds we did last year, if anyone got their hands on one, you could sort of see that this longer fermentation time does have quite an effect on the spirit, but on the new make especially, it's really thick, fruit driven, and almost got like a heathery grass herbal sort of note, I think, to it, and it's very, very good. The new make is pretty good. Really excited to actually get to the point where we're releasing 8, 10, 12, whatever as our fermentation. It's longer fermentation than what we used to do. The 160 hours is our shortest fermentation we do. So it's really exciting, and it's really good stuff that's running off.
Good stuff. Dominic, who's also on YouTube, is asking, I think we did kind of touch on this when you said that you've lowered production. Is there pressure on production versus quality as demand is growing? Is it tempting to ramp up the price to meet demand? I suppose there is temptation there, and we do see other distilleries kind of up in their price to kind of, I don't know if it's to offset that secondary market or to try and there must be an idea of you looking at it as a business model, say, well, this is what people are willing to pay for our whiskey. Why don't we charge it? But then you balance that against the guys who've been, they say, loyal to you for so long, want to buy it to drink it.
Yeah. I mean, we produce whiskey for people to consume. If they buy a bottle, it's completely up to them, then what they do with it. But yeah, I'd like to think that the hard work that Philip, the distilling team, and Lindsay and the warehouse team, that they put in to produce high quality spirit, the re-racking involved, the hard work that the warehouse guys go under, and then the work that Billy does in the lab isn't just so a bottle can sort of sit there and not be opened. It's all that hard work is meant for the liquid to be opened and enjoyed. There isn't really any pressure to ramp up production or ramp up pricing because somebody's willing to do that. We don't have a sort of shareholders or anything like that are putting pressure and wanting their bank balance to go up. We've got Billy, who is the one that's making it. So yeah, there is no pressure there. If we increase our prices, it's because we have had to, because
Yeah.
Prices have went up throughout the supply chain of dry goods and glass and malt and everything. So yeah, I firmly believe whiskey is meant to be consumed, and we'll do everything we can that it keeps that and allows people to open bottles and stuff and consume it and drink it and do events like this, or sit down with their pals and share a bottle that they really, really enjoy.
Good stuff. And I think we can use the 10-year-old Cask strength as that kind of example. We found that they were selling out in seconds. Batches kind of, well, it was a batch 4 that won the whiskey of the world.
Batch 4. Yeah, batch 4 won the world's best whiskey.
Yeah,
a few years ago now, and from that between the batch 4 and the introduction of the 15-year-old, and sort of the continuous development of the use of sherry casks within the rest of the core range, I feel that the 15 and the 10-year-old batch 4 was the two whiskies that really took GlenAllachie from being what would be sort of a niche, very connoisseurs sort of whiskey that some people knew about but weren't telling other people, to one that a lot of people were suddenly like, well, what is this? I've never heard of it before. I've seen it, or I've never tried it. I've never been inspired to try it. And yeah, those two whiskies at that sort of time period really sort of blew it away. And now we're on to batch 9. And look, anything we do is the sole purpose that we're doing it is, one, for it to be consumed. The other purpose is that we're always trying to make it better than the last one we did, whether that's a batch release, whether that's a 12-year-old, our 8-year-old, the wine cuvee we've just released. Every time we do it, it's a sort of stretch to go, can we make this better? And how can we make it better? Yeah, and that's with the 10-year-old, we feel every time we do a batch, every time we make a pilot sample of a batch, we sort of look at each other and think, hey, that's better than the last one. So everybody's got their own opinions, and they might think yes, they might think no, but that's what we are constantly striving to do, is to make it incrementally better.
Right. And the reason I mentioned that is because it was a batch 9 or maybe batch 8 that you increased the size of the batch, and that was obviously to allow more people, because it was selling out overnight. I remember walking into the shop one morning and all our batch 3 had sold out, and the batch 4 had sold out as well. And we actually had somebody phone up and say, I've ordered this GlenAllachie, a case of GlenAllachie 10-year-old, but I noticed it's a batch 3 I've bought. I don't want the batch 3, I want the batch 4. And we were like, well, the batch 4 is gone.
Yeah.
So he refunded the batch 3, and of course it went, as soon as it went back online, it sold out again. And about half an hour later, he's on the phone again saying, actually, can I just keep my order? Like, sorry, mate, it's gone. But yeah, I mean, it's great for you guys to then look and see people are missing out on this great whiskey. So what can we do to address that? And it becomes again a bottle that myself or Janice or Nick in Aberdeen or Craig down at Tyndrum can actually have in their hands and hand over to a customer in the shop, because we kind of lost that with the 10-year-old a little bit, where it was online and it was gone.
Yeah, it's for batch 8 and batch 9. We did increase the sizes of the overall sort of vatting ever so slightly, not to a astronomical amount that is widely available. As a batch release, it is still fairly small in the grand scheme of sort of whiskey releases. We would never sort of do anything that compromises what we're able to do in the future. We're not pulling down from 11-year-old or pulling down 12-year-old. We're looking to maintain that we're able to sustain a sort of level of volume throughout. And yeah, we did recognise that these things are flying off the shelves, and because the brand was more and more popular, your people that were buying it to consume weren't getting the opportunity to buy it. So we wanted that opportunity to be there, without compromising quality, without compromising what we're able to do in the future as well.
Sure. No, it's good, and we're all thankful for it, which is excellent. Let's move on to the 8-year-old, the Scottish Oak. And I remember when the 15 Scottish Oak came out, that was one of those that everyone was like, wow, this is brand new, this is exciting. We can't wait to get our hands on that. So the 8-year-old, 7 years younger. They caught a lot of people by surprise coming into the shop. They thought the next one would be older than the 15.
Yeah.
And Dominic on YouTube has asked, just to tie this in together. So this is batch 3 of the Virgin Oak series. Can you expand a little bit on this? and also the thoughts behind going for something younger than the 15-year-old this time around as well.
Yeah, so we sort of very loosely batched together our Virgin Oaks that we released in. I think we would have started with a Spanish, a French, and a Chinkapin off the top of my head a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But really, yeah, what we're doing is every year, every week maybe, we're trying to find different genuses of oak from around the world, whether that be Hungarian, Ukrainian, Siberian, Mongolian, Mizunara, different genuses in America and such. We're just looking to see how the spirit interacts with the different genus of Virgin Oak. The batches are just the bottlings of it. There's not like a batch 10, for example, where there's a connection between every one we do. These are very sort of, the three of them can stand alone by themselves. They try all the batches together if you wanted to, or you could try the three that we release at the one time. We think these three are very different from one another, but with a small similarity, you can see the DNA of GlenAllachie running through it as well. Philosophy behind, like, we'll bottle it when we think's ready. Again, is our philosophy of it. We released the 16-year-old. It was very successful. It was very, very good. We buy Scottish oak in a year, as quick as Speyside Cooperage can make it. There's one cooper at Speyside Cooperage that's willing to make it, because of the wood and it being very knotted and trees in Scotland, especially on the west coast, where these trees are sourced. They're not very tall. You don't get a lot of staves from the one tree, and it leaks massively when it comes to filling as well. So all in all, not a great wood type to work with, but we persevere and do it anyway. So yeah, the one cooper at Speyside Cooperage make them. So as long as he keeps making them, we'll keep putting whiskey into it. The reason we bottled the 8 years old younger than the one we bottled last year is because we think this one's ready. We thought it's ready at 8 years old, and we thought it was. I think it's very, very good. Similar sort of life story, I guess. It's been matured in refill bourbon barrels and then moved into the Virgin Scottish Oak. The spirit's getting in there and really pulling out. Again, you get a little bit of cinnamon, ginger snaps, a little bit of peppery, heather honey coming through, especially on the nose. A little bit of orange zest or orange peel. And so I always think for the Scottish oak samples that we look at, I always tend there seems to be quite a citrus sort of lemon meringue sort of nose and on the palate as well.
It's a bit more malty for me as well. It's maybe me thinking Scotland and porridge subliminally, but I think there's a biscuit base that I don't have in the Hungarian.
I always think it's maybe a combination of medium charred, medium toasted, but you get a sort of baked oats. What was that? Sort of used to get a little cake in school. It was sort of baked oats and honey together. It's that sort of.
Oh yeah.
Nose. I can't remember what it's called, but
not it's chocolate.
Like, gives me memories of that sort of nose. But the Scottish oak, yeah, it's
like a hobnob.
Difficult to make, difficult to mature whiskey in, constant evaluation, but we find the output or the sort of the whiskey that you get from it is very, very different. And yeah, it's something that we're, as long as I said, the cooper at Speyside Cooperage is willing to make it, we're willing to buy it and mature in it because we think it produces a really good whiskey. It's not we're not doing it as a Scottish owned, Scottish managed, Scottish run distillery. We're going to do a Scottish oak, a bit twee and everything. We're doing it because it produces good whiskey. Michael is correct. Flapjacks, I think, is what I was.
Flapjacks, yeah. I was thinking hobnobs, but they didn't have the honey in them, I don't think. But yeah. So I was going to ask about the Scottish oak or the whole Virgin Oak. Are you priming these to fill up and maybe do full maturation in these casks? Is that some thinking there? Scottish oak probably won't work for that, will it? If it's
Virgin oaks require a very intensive sort of monitoring. We tend to mostly medium charred, medium toast or Virgin Oak casks. And being Virgin Oak and drawing all that flavour from the wood, they do require constant attention. That Billy would say we don't overcook the spirit. We're trying to get it at that sweet spot, but you don't want to overcook. We find up to around 18, 24, maybe even 36 months is your prime virgin oak maturing life cycle. You start going beyond that. For us, what we think is what we are looking to do. You start delving into an area that it becomes a little bit more uncertain, and you might start to overcook a whiskey. And you don't want to do that. So if we were to start its life in virgin oak, I think you'd probably give it 3-4 years maximum, and then probably look to move it on into something else. Although it is a virgin oak is a great cask to finish a product in. Lots of flavour input depending where the cask's from. You either get more aromatic sort of flavours coming through, and then from depending where the cask is from as well, a little bit more tannin sort of element to it as well. So yeah, it's, for me, I would think it's more of a wood that you would look to finish in rather than do a full maturation in. But never say never. We might come across a genus of oak that we think, yeah, actually a full maturation of 8, 9, 10 years in this is going to work really, really well. And if we think it's going, we'll go for it, and then we'll see at that time if we get it right or wrong. Yeah, so virgin oak is the one that we do quite a lot of experimenting with, and we teeter on the edge of getting things right, getting things wrong.
So what happens to these casks? You disgorge this Hungarian oak, this Scottish oak. What happens to the cask then?
I guess technically it would be classified as an ex-GlenAllachie oak cask, yeah, or a first fill virgin oak, if you would. But that doesn't make any sense. They'll be reused. We'll use casks virgin, first fill, second fill. So they'll look to go back in, and they'll be filled again with spirit, looking to mature. Obviously, the strength that these casks are in, particularly the 8-year-old, will be really, really high. So the sort of elements within the cask, the components of the sort of characteristics within the cask that interact with the spirit at that ABV have been reacted with and then drawn out. You'd be looking to maybe put in a spirit of a slightly lower ABV going in than you would of the Scottish, the spirit that went into the Scottish Virgin Oak that we're trying to interact with the components that interact with spirit at that ABV, and they'll draw out other flavours. So they'll go back in and be reused at least another once.
Okay. I guess it would just be refill Hungarian oak. You just drop the virgin, I suppose, would it?
Refill, yeah, and then the great thing is that the liquid that's come out of it, the liquid that's sort of soaked the cask as well. So refill Hungarian oak, ex-GlenAllachie Hungarian oak, ex-GlenAllachie Scottish oak, if you would.
Yeah, that'd be fun to see the progression of the cask as well as the spirit. I'm doing a side by side with the 15 and the 8. The 8-year-old is much more intense for me, much more honeyed. I think the 15 is slightly more balanced, but a little bit calmer. You don't have that intensity. Some would say smoother, I suppose. It's certainly less fragrant and less zesty on the nose. The 8-year-old has that bit of fun about it that I think is maybe more interesting and a little bit vibrant. But comparing the two, I just did that because I don't have the Spanish oak to compare next. We've got Mere.
I think I've seen a real difference between, if everyone's still got some of the Hungarian and the Scottish, you've seen a real difference there. They're a year apart in age, so one spent a tiny little bit longer in a refill bourbon. You're seeing a real difference there. The interesting thing about the Scottish and the Hungarian is they're actually the same genus of oak, Quercus petraea. They're the same genus of oak, but obviously Hungarian grows at a much higher altitude, and the Scottish oak is slightly more difficult to work with. Hungarian slightly tighter oaks are better to mature whiskey in, and you're getting these different flavours, and the difference is one's grown in Hungary in the Zemplin forest and one's grown on the west coast of Scotland. So those are the differences there, and that comparison between the two is what we're looking to do with our Virgin Oak series, and so people can sort of see the real interesting different flavours from where the tree is grown.
Awesome. Yeah, two very, very different rams, and even in the colour as well. I know people don't really look at, or maybe shouldn't look at colour so much, but we're seeing a little bit more of an influence in the Scottish oak, a little bit darker. as well.
The Scottish oak is moving in that, what you'd say, quite a traditional virgin oak finish, where it's got a little bit of that sort of dark reddish sort of hue to it as well, slightly deeper colour. And the Hungarian is very light, sort of very golden, if you would. The Scottish oak is moving in that direction. People have poured the 10-year-old Spanish oak, they'll see it's moved again in that direction. It's got a slightly bit more colour depth to it.
The Spanish, I think, has been a mainstay through the 3 series. Has it been in all 3?
It's definitely been in 2 of the 3. I think we might have missed it out last year, but people can correct me. I've got a terrible memory for these things, which isn't very good. But yeah, the Spanish oak is one that we have quite regularly. We get regular sort of deliveries of. Obviously, it's a more accessible, attainable oak type. So yeah, it's one we have, and one that's very, very fascinated by as well.
Yeah. So do you get these from the bodegas that are working with the sherry, or where do you source these from? Is there something specific to make them for you?
So we'll work with a cooperage based in Spain that source their virgin oak casks. We work directly with Miguel Martin to source any of our sherry casks that we have, but we'll work with a cooperage in Spain that can supply us with virgin oak. Most of our virgin oak, except the Scottish, which obviously a couple of the different genuses of American oak that we have, Chinkapin, Gariana, that we're trying to source, will come through Speyside cooperage.
Perfect. Good stuff. We're going to go off piste slightly. I'm going to pronounce this name completely wrong, but he's watching on Facebook from Holland, Meer Jam. It looks really easy to say, but when you try and say it, I'm probably getting it completely wrong. But he's saying that Holland is very excited about the single cask Marsala coming into the Netherlands. I haven't tried it. Ronan, what can you tell us about that?
They are right to be excited. It is very, very good. It's every single cask that comes out of the distillery is chosen by Billy, is whittled down from a selection of casks into what we believe are some of our most exciting, interesting, and very best casks that we have, that we feel have the ability to stand by themselves and represent GlenAllachie and the sort of story that we're telling. So I have no doubt that the single cask Marsala, which isn't a wood type that we particularly use within our core range an awful lot, will be very exciting for the Netherlands, and it should be absolutely fascinating and fantastic to try. Yeah, everything that any single cask, any product that we release, whether it's our 8-year-old, 12-year-old wine cuvee, virgin oak, single cask, Billy, it runs through Billy. Billy's final say that they're going forward. But nothing goes out without his approval.
So just I'm sure I picked up a Marsala. So this was the 2019. I think it was a handfill back in the original handfill labels.
Back in the old days.
I've got so many of these with about this much liquid, and it's crazy. I used to go up for every and unfortunately, just time and money, I had to put a little bit aside for the wee man, so I'm not quite as keen to throw money at handfills and exclusives and that anymore. But certainly up until probably beginning of last year, at every handful, and most of them are sitting just with about an inch at the bottom, and I just can't bring myself to finish them, because I know that once I finish that bottle, that's the liquid gone.
That is the most annoying thing about single casks, limited releases and such. Is that buy ones that you sort of, for me, it's GlenAllachie port is my sort of obsession. The one that I buy when we release anything within port.
Yeah,
I'll buy it to drink, to consume, to enjoy. And then I think, why don't we do more of this? That's the sort of game that we're in.
What do you prefer from the Tawny and the Ruby port? What's your preference?
Probably say I would prefer the Ruby. Ruby port is more my style. I think we did a Ruby port. I'm not saying I had major influence in it, but we did a Ruby port for the Spirit of Speyside bottle, and we did, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic. which I bought a bottle and opened anyway. Yeah, I think it's absolutely brilliant. I wish we did more of it, but then I understand that you can't just do everything that you want.
No, almost, but not everything. You have to draw the line that to be tasting all this great spirit, working under bully every day, getting to travel the world. You have to draw a line somewhere that says you're not getting to do this part of it.
Yeah, I guess the way you've said it out there makes me seem quite spoiled. Yeah.
I'm just jealous, Tony. I'm absolutely just jealous. So Dominic on Facebook, on YouTube, has put his thoughts comparing the two. The Scottish oak is a lot zestier with more forward spice, not as drying as the Hungarian, which tends towards a slight bitterness on the finish. Like a grapefruit, this goes over 2 comments. So like a Facebook, orange peel, touch of chocolate, coffee, lemon meringue. Comment really captured the finish of the Scottish oak. So he's very much agreeing with you on that one. And he's followed that up. Fortunate enough to buy the distillery special for the festival. Second to last bottle at 5 p.m. on the first day. My God. That sells out quick, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's Speyside is a great festival, great time around the distillery, a lot of buzz around the place, and no, it's great. And yeah, we were very busy this year at the Spirit Speyside, both in terms of footfall through the distillery, people doing the tours, and the sort of tastings we held on site and around the sort of local area as well. Yeah, we were very busy, and we were pouring a lot of the Speyside single cask because it's a absolutely fantastic whiskey. And yeah, going back to what we said earlier, we very much want people to try it, to open it, and to try it and stuff, and try to price it accordingly and allow people to open it and try it and enjoy it and stuff as well. Yeah, it's a great single cask.
There is that idea that if you try something and you like it, and if so, you've bought a bottle and you think, no, I'm going to keep that on the shelf, or you either open it for a special occasion, X amount of years down the line, celebration or something, or to resell whatever the fancy. But if you've tasted it and that bottle is on that shelf looking at them every day and you know how it tastes, the temptation is always there just to say, oh, sod it, I'm going to crack it open, I want to taste it again. So liquid on lips is very, very appealing in that kind of sense.
Yeah, it's a different, if you know what something tastes like when it comes with whiskey, it's if you've got a bottle, it's difficult to look at it and not go, I know what I'm getting, and I know I'm going to enjoy it. The one for anything GlenAllachie and port, but the sort of White Heather range that we have, our blended whiskey, for me is like the 15-year-old is a staple within my sort of drinks cabinet at home. It's one that's always open, it's always there, like it's high quality, you know what you're getting. And
I'd agree with you.
It's difficult to hold on to a bottle because it's so good, and like that's. I hope that everyone has that with a bottle of GlenAllachie, that they think, oh, I wish I could just hold on to that a little bit longer, but they actually go, no, it's too good not to try.
Yeah, my dad used to work with, I think it was Chivas. No, I think it was White Heather. Originally, he would pick up the draft from. He never worked for them, but he would pick up the draft and deliver barley to the distilleries and stuff. So he had one of the old school, the small kind of square bottles of White Heather. So when the 21 came out, I bought him a bottle of that. And we still sit down and do a comparison between the two. Or now 3 with the 15. But,
I think they'll be vastly different, I think, but hopefully both enjoyable.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure they will be. We had a lot of people in the shop saying that this was the best Speyside festival yet. Do you agree with that? Obviously, GlenAllachie is fairly new to that.
The new to Speyside Festival, since joining GlenAllachie and then COVID, probably only experienced two Speyside festivals, and I certainly think it was busier. I like the buzz around sort of Aberlour and Craigellachie and stuff around the distillery as well. Is in a former life working down in Campbelltown, the sort of festival is massive down there, and there's always a buzz around the town. And people are enjoying themselves. So it's obviously Speyside Festival is slightly different with the distilleries being so far apart over a wider area, but there was a real real buzz around the place, which is good. And
Good.
people from all over the world coming to relatively small, very small places in Aberlour and Craigellachie and stuff and hanging out. Team and I went and visited the Highlander on Friday night in Craigellachie, and look, it was absolutely packed, which is great to see. Tatsuya's, he's a great guy, and the staff there are fantastic as well. And it's good to see these places busy and buzzing. And yeah, it was a good festival. I think it was good. It was good for us, GlenAllachie. It was good for just visually seeing a lot of people around the place and stuff.
Yeah.
The town's been alive with whiskey enthusiasts and stuff too.
Yeah, a good shot in the arm as well, because I think last year obviously been the first in-person event for maybe 3 years now, 2020, 2021?
Yeah,
2 years anyway. There was still just that little bit of wariness about what was going on in big crowds and things.
Yeah.
But I think this year that shackles were off, wasn't it? And people were really keen to get in a hustle and bustle.
Yeah, and when there's a good buzz around the distillery, when that we all sort of are based in Glasgow in terms of sort of sales and marketing team and such, and yeah, we all go up for it to try and get involved and help out where we can and stuff, host tastings if we can and stuff. But it's good to see the industry. It's good to see the local area sort of alive with lots of visitors coming in and sort of hopefully sampling some really good whiskies, enjoying themselves, and yeah, go away again and sort of be ambassadors not just for the region but for specific distilleries, hopefully GlenAllachie, that they visited when they've been there.
And well, let's go into the Spanish oak, and then we'll talk about the other new development at the distillery with the opening of the bar as well. So, talk us through the Spanish oak, Ronan, and guys at home. Let us know what your thoughts are on this one.
So yeah, Spanish oak, again, repeat myself, which I have a tendency to do. Spent the first maturation cycle in refill bourbon and moved for around 18, 24 months in the Virgin Spanish Oak. Obviously, you start getting from Quercus Robert as the genus, you start getting a lot more sort of fruit-driven notes, lots of stone fruits, a little bit deeper cherries, sort of coffee pudding as well on the nose. A little bit of sort of caramelized brown sugar, slightly sweeter, but fruit sweetness to it. Yeah, it's I love Spanish oak. I think it's a great wood to mature in. I think the whiskey produced is absolutely fantastic, and it's just a little bit more tannin influence. It's so different from the other two. Although it's wood and it doesn't really have that sort of effect, but it's like Spanish Virgin Oak has been doing this for longer. It's imparting more flavour into it. It's got more experience at doing it. With the Hungarian, the Virgin Oak, I've got a little less experience than what they're doing with the Spanish. It's got more body to it. It's deeper, a lot more sort of rich, ripe, maybe even slightly poached sort of fruits in there as well.
Interesting. Do you think, because the conception or quite a wide impression of European oak, what we perceive as European oak, a lot of people think that's from Spain, when in fact most of it comes from kind of Limousin in France and things. Mm-hmm. Is there a big difference between French European oak and Spanish European oak in terms of the flavour?
If I was French, I would tell you that the French oak is better, because any French person I spoke to, they've always said that their oak is better, which is obviously a matter of opinion. I tend to find that French oak gives you a little bit more of a lighter floral-like flavour, where Spanish oak for me is just slightly deeper in terms of the sort of fruits that you start to pick up. As I said, sort of poached apple or poached pear, slightly more cooked fruits. Mm-hmm. On the palate, I tend to think that the Spanish oak is a little bit more sugar, a little bit more molasses, a little bit more thicker, lots of syrup, heather honey in there. Still, you've got that underlying from what we're tasting here of that sort of bourbon maturation in there as well. You've got the vanillas, sort of popcorn, sort of a little bit of sort of Biscoff sort of flavour. But yeah, I think we released a French last year.
You did, yeah, the 10-year-old.
Yeah.
I think that was alongside the Spanish, wasn't it? Was it this the 15 Scottish and the Spanish?
That's right. Yeah, we did a Scottish 15. I think it was 2 10-year-olds, the French and the Spanish.
Yeah,
which would be a great comparison to do again. Of the sort of very similar, countries close in proximity to one another, different genuses of oak, different growing styles, different sort of drying periods, lots of different elements in which could influence the flavour.
That reminds me to go back to Ian's question, which I did see but completely forgot about. Sorry, Ian. Ronan, do you know if the wood used in your casks are air dried or kiln dried?
Air dried. All three would have been air dried. I've actually got it written down because this is always one I mix up. The Spanish is 18 months air dried. I'll just tell the Scottish because I've got it here. The Scottish is 36 months, and then the Hungarian. I've written that down. The Hungarian will have been around 18 months as well, air dried. Always write them down because I end up saying one's 36, one's 42 or something like that. So try not. Can't remember everything and don't remember a lot anyway. So yeah.
So is the Scottish longer just because of the climate? It takes longer to do.
You're looking at the climate. The climate is the major reason for the air drying being slightly longer. I think if you look, we are trying to source some Hungarian oak. It's obviously a protected genus of oak from the west coast, northwest of America, sort of Seattle, sort of Oregon area. Very, very good climate as well. Interesting oak because they need to fail. They would need to fail naturally. You can't cut them down. So if you see me wandering around woods in Washington State trying to push trees over, that's why they're similar to Scottish oak. 36 months, maybe even longer, air dried. And it's all based on the climate. We're obviously Spain and Hungary, slightly warmer.
Juliet is throwing her oar in. She thinks the French oak is more elegant.
I knew Juliet would be watching.
She just tuned in when she heard French oak. It
was a bat signal going off in the sky.
Great to have you on, Juliet. Nice to hear from you. Adam and Joe Collier are 50-50. They're split between the Scottish and Spanish. What about you guys? So guys at home, let us know. Of the three, Bob Sander on Facebook is agreeing with yourself, Ronan, the Spanish, really smooth and juicy. So guys, yeah, let us know what of that three Virgin Oaks is your favourite, or if you preferred one from the previous, if you like the Chinkapin or the French Oak or the Scottish 15, what has been your standouts? What can we expect in the future, if you're allowed to tell us, from the Virgin Oak series?
I mean, there's been a lot of the Virgin Oaks that we're working with. Billy has spoken of previously, so that sort of then gives me license to speak about it as well. The people have seen, we've released Scottish, we've released Chinkapin, I've mentioned Gariana, and we've got other genuses of American oak as well from different parts of the States that we have maturing that we're trying to source as well. We've obviously released Mizunara last year in Billy's anniversary series. We're trying to get more of that. We had quite a unique / interesting field experiment when it came to, I would describe as Siberian oak, Billy would describe as Russian oak, that we tried to source pre anything going on. We sourced and we thought that this would be a cheaper, more viable option than Mizunara oak. So we went along the sort of the latitude and found an oak that was grown in the same as Hokkaido, and we thought this will be cheaper because Mizunara oak's over £3,000 a cask, and that's still sitting in Japan. And so we thought this Siberian oak would be a slightly cheaper, more viable option to mature something that will give us the same sort of flavour profiles. That turned out to be completely wrong. It doesn't give the same flavour profiles. It's still a very, very nice whiskey. But going back to what I said earlier, being independent, being able to do what we want, and having that sort of freedom, we have the ability to make these slight mistakes and matured into a very good whiskey, but wasn't the path we thought it would go down. So we went back to the drawing board and we sourced some Mongolian oak, which this time we think will give us a cheaper, more viable option than Mizunara, but we'll wait and see. It's still maturing away, and even delving closer to home. we then went and picked up some Hungarian oak, and we're looking at other parts of Europe as well that might have a supply of oak that we can tap into and see how the environment in which it's grown in has an effect. But yeah, we still buy Mizunara oak at great expense, but we'll buy it because it produces a fascinating whiskey. But yeah, Mongolian oak is something we're keeping a very close eye on just now, in the hope that it gives us the same flavour as Mizunara, and we don't need to spend that money.
And because Mizunara is quite famous for leaking as well, isn't it? Is that similar to Scottish oak, or Scottish oak worse?
I think Andrew, who looks after Asia for us in the sales team, was a member of the warehouse team. I think he said that the Mizunara, the first time it was supplied, it came through Speyside Cooperage, and we were well warned that, by the way, this is a treacherous ground to be going on. And then they filled it, and it wasn't instant leaking. It was almost like there was a split second, and then it's just suddenly started going. So the guys quickly fixed it and stuff, and Speyside Cooperage will always come back in and fix anything that needs fixing and stuff. They're brilliant like that. So yeah, I think the Mizunara is slightly more porous. From what I've heard from Billy and other people that have worked with Mizunara maybe before, that it's the second time you use it, you start getting more palatable, enjoyable flavours, and also it's slightly less porous and slightly easier to work with.
Okay. Yeah. Dominic's just asking, what is Mizunara? So Mizunara is Japanese oak, Dominic, effectively. He is leaning towards the Scottish oak, but the Spanish oak surprisingly different to the other two, with a lot more nuttiness, pencil shape, and stone fruit, and sweet caramel. I think you guys are all just ganging up on me because you know I don't have the Spanish oak, to be fair. So I know we mentioned Scott Adamson from Tomatin recently, and Ian's just popped up the question there. Colombian oak, they just released the Kubokin, which they think is the first
Scottish. I've seen that. Yeah,
it's really nice. A cracking, really kind of obviously tied in with the kind of slight smokiness. Really nice cooked kind of tropical fruit note in there. Have you got Colombian oak in the warehouses? Or?
We don't actually. We don't. Tomatin or Kubokin have beaten us to the punch there on that one. It's not something we've used before. It will be something that I'll be very interested to try. Hopefully Scott is watching and can send me some. But yeah, I seen that the other day and I thought, oh, that's very interesting. It's not something we do before. You never know. Maybe something we look at in the future. It's not something we've delved in now.
No. I know Alistair up at Rassay has some in his warehouses as well, and it gives a lot of flavour really quickly. Going by his cask, I had the pleasure of trying it last time I was over, and I think it was only about 3 months in the cask, and it was giving off some brilliant flavours. So yeah, I would, from the two, Ian's popped on Quercus Humboldti, which is the genus. From the two I've tried, I would very much recommend you get your hands on some of that.
We'll definitely take a look at it. It's always interesting oak genuses and the flavours they impart onto the spirit. It's always something that we're interested in.
Too much. We'll brush over that comment from Mere Jam, will we?
It was always coming. It was always
yeah. Just no, we're not even going to appreciate it, Mere, but we'll brush over it. So, guys, we're going to go on. We've got the 10-year-old, or the two 10-year-olds, batch 9 and batch 2. Obviously, the MacNairs is your peated blended malt whiskey. So we'll start with the cask strength batch 10. Guys, get that in your glass. Let's have a wee chat about this. We've kind of touched on the batches a little bit earlier in the chat with that kind of explosion of popularity from the batch 4, and how that's kind of evolved. How does this cask selection differ from? How do you beat the whiskey of the year in terms of progression? You see, you always try and beat that or better it.
Yeah, I suppose it's quite difficult. It's quite fun, but it's something we strive for. The differences in the batches, obviously the ABV differs, which is But speaking about the sort of cask makeup, it comes down to the spirit at that vintage that we have available to us. Now there will always be predominantly PX and Oloroso sherry. Sometimes the PX will outweigh the Oloroso, sometimes the opposite. But in the case of the batch 9, the PX and the Oloroso are actually the same. It's the same inputs, the same percentage of the overall vatting is imparting into the spirit. So, and we've obviously used Virgin Oak, American Virgin Oak, and then we've used a slightly higher proportion of Rioja red wine barriques than we have done for previous. That's because when we move into the lab after the sort of maturation, we pull the samples and start working on the pilots, which we'll start 8 to 6 months out. We'll look at how the product should look when it comes to bottling, and then we'll look at that again 3 months out. And then when Lindsay and the warehouse guys put the batting together to be sent to the bottler, we'll pull that bottle and we'll do a comparison from 8, 3, and then bottling, and see if the maturation has moved in the direction we were looking for, but also if they're fairly similar. And this is a great learning experience for me to be able to evaluate spirit 8 months out and maneuver percentages up and down to see how much flavour we can change and either increase, or maybe we change it and it goes the other way and it's not as good as what we thought it would be and such. So we do this quite religiously, 8 to 6 months out and then 3 months out. And sometimes it'll take us 2 or 3 different sort of overall vattings of it to get where we think it's right. But we're constantly just trying to better ourselves to beat what we've previously done. Like batch 9 served at 58.1%, non-chill filtered, no added colouring, same as everything we do at GlenAllachie. TX Oloroso will be hogsheads, smaller wood type, bigger injection of flavour as well than what you would get from a puncheon, and then a higher proportion of Rioja red wine first fill barriques as well.
Mm-hmm. Michael's just added a wee drop of water to his cask shreds. It opens it up a wee bit more for a change. The bottle here was tried straight, so I thought I'd try a drop or two this time. Bob is really impressed. A really rich and full-bodied, stronger ABV, clearly doesn't need water, and it's gorgeous tasting neat. So he's saying fantastic. So some good comments coming from him, some great comments coming from him. There's Virgin Oak in here, isn't there? American Oak.
So it's what you would say is Quercus alba, American Oak, White Oak, if you would. So it's not Chinkapin, it's not any sort of specific, it's not any sort of special, more unique genus. It's sort of not run of the mill, but it's your most readily available traditional Virgin Oak cask.
Yeah, and is that wouldn't be a fully matured 10-year-old Virgin Oak cask? Is that a finished Virgin Oak cask? Yeah,
that'll be a finish from. A lot of what we do, quite long finishes as well. The sort of PX and Oloroso will now be pushing 4 or 5 years in these sherry casks and the red wine as well. Virgin Oak, obviously, as I said, needs a little bit more monitoring, maybe a slightly shorter finish, but we inherited a vast amount of casks from Chivas, majority of which were in refill bourbon, 3rd, 4th fill. So a lot of the painstaking work that Lindsay and the warehouse guys would have went under at the beginning was the re-racking into different wood types that we felt that the GlenAllachie DNA would work better with, and that allows us to produce something with PX, Oloroso, Virgin Oak, and red wine, and combining those together. So it's taking it out of that refill bourbon and moving into first fill PX, first fill Oloroso, first fill red wine. A lot of first fill bourbon as well, moved it back into first fill bourbon, Hidden Hill, James Pepper, Koval bourbon. Again, just to bring it into a more active cask for them that will then move on further when we look to do something different. So inherited a lot of refill bourbon, so there was a lot of re-racking, a lot of second maturation finishes, but for me, we release a 10-year-old cask strength at cask strength, and it's at that strength because we think it's enjoyable at that strength, it's palatable. It shouldn't be this massive, intense burst of alcohol. It shouldn't be very spirit driven. To me, the alcohol sort of spirit flavour can always be a component within an overall flavour wheel that you're putting together. It shouldn't be the most dominant, shouldn't burn you. It could be quite palatable and enjoyable. But the reason we don't chill filter to add colour, amongst many other reasons, is that you're able to add a couple of drops of water to it and drink it the way and when you think it is at your flavour profile. We don't release cask strength whiskies just because they're cask strength. We release them because we think it's most enjoyable at that strength as well. But if someone wants to add water, then that's perfectly up to them.
Yeah, I picked up the distillery, the 13-year-old Oloroso mature. I'm very much looking forward to getting into that cask strength as well. This one is
the 13-year-old distillery exclusive is it's a breakaway from what I've just said. It's a fully matured Oloroso. So it's been 13 years in Oloroso. To go against what I've just said, we did inherit some sherry butts, we did inherit some Oloroso casks from Chivas as well. Some other quite strange, unique things, but yeah, when it came to creating a distillery exclusive, we felt doing something in full Oloroso was the sort of exclusive right way to go down.
Excellent. I was going to just jump back. Let's talk a little bit about yourself before moving on to the next. You joined GlenAllachie during lockdown, 2020, was it, or into 21?
It would have been end of, when was lockdown? 2020. It would have been
almost exactly 3 years ago, I think.
So it would have been just before the new year, so 2019, end of 2019.
Okay, right. So what were you doing before that? For the guys at home,
what was I doing before that? Stealing a living, working for Springbank Distillery and Kilkerran, the Glengyle Distillery as well. So I worked there for, combined with Cadenhead, William Cadenhead's independent bottler. I worked there for maybe just over 3 years, and then moved to GlenAllachie.
All right. I
was working in sales. I think technically sales and marketing, but it being Springbank, not a lot of marketing was done. So yeah, it was and it was great. Like, great working for a distillery from where I grew up quite a lot of my life. Great spirit and stuff. But I think the opportunity to join, as I said previously, a distillery that is fairly unknown. I was slightly aware of it from the time working with an independent bottler. That I had a sort of blank canvas to paint a very unique, interesting new story. Was and to work with Billy, alongside Billy, it was a no-brainer at the time.
I'm sure working under or alongside Frank McCarty would have been an experience.
I think I was just missed Frank. Frank and I got on quite well. Frank's a really good guy and a wealth of knowledge as well, and a lot of time for Frank. I think he's probably got less time for me. But Frank was a very good guy. A lot of great people there. Ranald and Sweeney as well. Great people that I enjoy a beer with now and then. But a lot of great people there. And, coming to GlenAllachie, it was a bit of a change. I think sort of a very old distillery to something that's quite a new sort of brand and sort of distillery as well. So it was different experiences, but all great fun.
We find quite a lot that happens with brand ambassadors or whatever role within the whiskey industry, that once you're in the industry, it's very, very hard to let it go, isn't it? It kind of gets under your skin. People kind of move, they might move job, but it's still an ambassadorial role, or it's into production, or it's into blending or something, but it's always in whiskey, isn't it? It might be a different distillery, but it seems to get under your skin.
Yeah. It's the only real job, working in whiskey is the only real job I've had. I've left uni, was working in bars and stuff, and get tired of late nights and dealing with drunk people, so got a job in whiskey where it's late nights and dealing with drunk people. So yeah, it's yeah. I've only really worked in whiskey, so I can't stay within whiskey. I don't know it all, but it's the only thing I do know.
Yeah, it's. I'm sure you would. That was going to be my next question. This is more of a question that we reserve for our Thursday night blenders. But if it wasn't for whiskey, what other passions do you have that you might pursue?
I've got absolutely no idea. I tried being a footballer. I wasn't good enough and didn't have the drive to be a footballer. Yeah, I don't know. Any big business that works in Campbelltown. So
whiskey.
Fishing, wind turbine, building wind turbine, something like that. I don't know what. I was 21 when I started at Springbank, so.
Hey, I mean, you're doing an excellent job where you are, so I don't think you'll ever have to leave the industry. So you've got that on your side, absolutely.
I might be asked to leave. I might never choose to leave.
There's a lot of guys being asked to leave and always end up in a job still in the industry. So I think you'll do all right. Yeah. Moving on to the last dram then, guys. We have the 10-year-old MacNairs, which is completely different, again, to anything we've had in the lineup. MacNair's kind of seen as kind of deliberately separate from GlenAllachie, but still under kind of Billy Walker, I suppose. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows that there's GlenAllachie in here, and they know this, or maybe not everyone does know. So tell us a little bit about the kind of reasoning behind launching or relaunching the MacNair brand.
So MacNair's, it was a brand that was inherited along with White Heather and then GlenAllachie single malt when the distillery was purchased. And we wanted to create something that stood out away from GlenAllachie, a single malt, non-peated, to produce something that we felt was of high quality, but provided that peated element that is obviously huge, has a huge appreciation within the whiskey industry. It's a blended malt, so there's no grain content. It's a combination of 4 different distilleries, 2 from Speyside, one of which is obviously GlenAllachie, and then 2 from Islay. We've serving this at cask strength, so it's 55.8%. We do have a 12-year-old and we do have a 21-year-old as well with the same 4 distilleries. So you get that look at how these 4 different components put together, how they mature, how they develop as they get older, even between a 10 and a 12. It's something we wanted to say as a step onto Islay, if you would, or a step off of Islay. If you want to blow your palate away with iodine, TCP, and salt and everything like that, and your palate's just not there yet, One Week can be a good step onto that. It's that softer peat note. It's with the sort of the blend, if you would, of the introduction of GlenAllachie, thick, heavy, quite honeyed, syrup-like spirit, and then the other Speyside as well that provides a little bit more fruitiness. And then the introduction of the sherry casks, again, the Virgin Oak, American Virgin Oak, and the Rioja. It gives you a slightly different look at what a peated whiskey can be while being Islay peated. And we wanted to, again, similar to the 10-year-old GlenAllachie cask strength, we wanted to present it at a higher strength where the peat was slightly more intense, but then gives the consumer, gives the drinker the ability to add some water to it.
It's certainly more on that, that kind of, it's smoky rather than peaty, isn't it? It's, for in my mind, I try and separate the two into peaty being that coastal iodine, what people, Lafroig, Lagavulin, that kind of thing, and then smoky kind of West Coast mainland kind of style. It's certainly kind of just crosses over that.
Yeah, I would say it's more sort of campfire ash, campfire smoke, cigar box, sort of worn leather. I put down in tasting notes for 1 week before, sort of grilled honeycomb, if you would, any sort of grilled or cooked sort of sugar, that sort of level of sort of burnt toastedness.
Yeah.
not that punch in the face Octomore P or Lefroy or whatever. It is a more softer ash-like lingering smoke, combined with lots of fruit, lots of chocolate, lots of red berries, butterscotch.
It takes a lot of boxes for somebody, and we have them in the shop, and I'm sure every shop and every distillery gets them. Oh, I don't like peated whiskey. I don't like cask strength. I don't like strong whiskey. I don't like blends.
Yeah.
This is one that you could give every one of those people, and well, try this. You don't like peated whiskey, try this. You don't like blends, try this one. It ticks a lot of those boxes for somebody to say, well, actually, if this is what peated whiskey is, because a lot of people, guys, who don't like peated whiskey, all they've maybe tried is something extremely peated, Lefroy, Lagavulin, Ardbeg. That's all they've ever kind of tried. So we try and guide them into something maybe like a Colila or a Bowmore, which is slightly less intense, maybe a bit more fruit in there, a little bit more kind of cooked caramelized honey or caramelized butterscotch. So this is certainly, this is not me digging as to what the Islay whiskey is, but if you want to tell us, fine. But it's certainly more Colila-esque than that really iodine, really medicinal kind of flavors there.
Yeah, and we're not, when we're looking at Crate Limerick or MacNair's, of the three different bottlings we do of MacNair's or Limerick, we're not looking to produce something that is sitting alongside a Lefroy and going, oh, these taste very similar. We want to produce something that's got that peat element. If you look at a sort of peat flavour profile or a sort of flavour wheel or whatever you would like to call it, that it is an element within the overall flavour profile that you pick up. We don't just want it to be the only thing you get. We were looking for something slightly softer on that iodine flavour profile and something that's just more, as we're saying, sort of smoke, ash, that sort of, with elements of fruit coming from the Islay distilleries as well. And I think from the 10, the 21, which is a very small production of, that get a hold of the 21-year-old is absolutely fantastic because that peat level has dropped off ever so slightly. And these distilleries that we source from Islay, when they get slightly older, traditionally they do get more sort of biscuity, fruit-driven, lots of butterscotch as well, which combines really well with the Speyside that we're traditionally using as well. Absolutely brilliant. The great thing about Limerick and what we do, and it's the great thing about White Heather and what we do as well, we source all these casks individually, bring them onto the site, and then blend them there. Whether that's the grain whiskies for the White Heather, or the elements of the White Heather components, or the three other distilleries, we're sourcing them independently and bring them onto the site, getting them into the sherry, the red wine, the virgin oak, and then we're putting it together. As I said earlier, everything is running through the blending lab on site. Everything is running past Billy. We're not buying in pre-batch stuff that we're adding GlenAllachie to and then shoving it out the door. It's not the way we like to do things. We like to control as much as we can control, buying the casks in separately, working with the maturation, then looking to move towards the finished product is the way we do things. And we think doing it this way, although it's longer, more methodical, more time consuming, better results. And I think when you try the 10-year-old cask strength batch 2, you can see there is still, with it being a blended malt or the White Heather being a blend, there's so much effort that goes into this throughout the whole team to create what is a really lovely, enjoyable, with a peat undertone whiskey there.
Absolutely. I was going to ask, actually, that was one of the questions I've got down here, was the blended process, because we're seeing a lot of guys, a lot of independent companies, bottlers and likes going down this blended malt or blended route to create something that's affordable, because single malt is always rising, and people want something within that 30-35 pound bracket if they can. So I was going to ask, was the MacNair's blends like a long running contract with a blender? But you've just answered that by saying no, you guys are blending house, so consistency isn't key here. It's still experimental, it's still evolving, and every batch is going to be different.
Yeah, I mean the white heather with the blend, the MacNairs with the blended malt, it runs under the same sort of
Ethos.
umbrella ethos that we do with GlenAllachie. We aren't striving for consistency, whatever that saying is that we said once. That's now
We don't strive for consistency; we strive for perfection.
Yes.
Along that
So
line,
we're working with the same ethos here when it comes to MacNairs. Every time we do a bottling of it, we're trying to make it better. We're not looking for it to be the exact same. Obviously, with the 10-year-old batch releases, they are slightly different, as there is always going to be that obvious level of difference. But with the 12 or the 21, yeah, we're not finished. Billy will say it's 90%, but the last 10% is the hardest to do if it's actually achievable. We're trying to just make it, we're trying to go that extra 10% every time to make it better. And whether it's a blend or a blended malt or a single malt, it's the same ethos and belief when it comes to that. And it's what, I guess, what keeps us going to that last 10%.
Absolutely. And what a great way to finish the lineup, as Bob Sander has said, a lovely peaty final dram to super lineup. He wouldn't pick this as a blended. I think there's certainly that kind of people turn their nose up when they see blend. And guys, from a personal point of view, let's go over that bridge and just say, try some blends. They're all out there, and it's just a name. You know, if you trust guys like Billy to produce a sensational single malt, trust him to produce a sensational blend, and take that leap of faith.
And Billy was a chemist to start in his earlier days. He's a blender at heart, I guess, if you look at it, and his work with Highland Walker and Inverhouse and Burns Stewart. He's a blender. He's a master blender. When you get him creating airs, or you get him looking into white heather and the different components, that's the artistry of it. That's taking what other people have done, maturing it in different cask types, and putting it together to produce something which is fantastic and enjoyable. That's the artistry of it. That's the fun. And yeah, if you trust them, if you trust any blender with single malt, and try their blends,
Absolutely,
they'll be very, very good.
Yeah, any factory can make paper, but only an artist can paint a picture, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, you could say that. Yeah, definitely.
I do think that the blending or the cask selection and all that's there, because no matter what distillery you work in, depending, there are some exceptions that always tweaking, and some guys are still there finding their feet. Guys like Holyrood are always kind of changing in yourselves. You've gone through the majority of that change or tweaking, and now you're kind of looking at what you can do with that spirit. But everyone kind of runs to certain temperatures, certain cut times, certain you've got the shape of the stills and all this kind of stuff to create consistent spirit. Once that goes into the cask, that's when the fun starts, isn't it? That's when the blender really earns there.
That's hitting out all the classic sayings. The cask is king. That all these things that you can produce, you can guarantee yourself almost guarantee yourself a very consistent spirit by doing things by numbers in the correct way and having a target of what you want to produce, cut points, fermentation times, run times, and you get the spirit. That's when you get to move it, shake it, and move in different directions that can sort of contrast the natural sort of flavour, or you can enhance the natural flavour of the spirit. And then you start introducing spirit that you've not created, that you've not worked with, and producing something that's well balanced, fruit driven, easy drinking. That's the fun of it all. And to be able to do that, the answer is experience.
We've gone full circle. Yeah, absolutely. I suppose it's fun. Yeah, putting your name to something you've produced, and then putting your name to something you've produced from something that somebody else has put together.
Yeah,
that's quite something. It's incredible, and to be proud of putting your name to something that somebody else has put together.
The work that distillers and blenders or master distillers that other distilleries are doing, they're looking for incredible whiskies as well. It's not that you're taking bad whiskies or terrible whiskies or unwanted spirit or anything from other places and polishing it and making it better. You're taking already high quality spirit and changing it and making it hopefully better. You're not taking bad spirit and making it good. You're taking already good spirit and hopefully with different components making it better.
Mm. Yeah, I wonder if that's the kind of subliminal idea of blends, is that it wasn't good enough for a single malt, so they put it in a blend, which is absolutely not the case. But maybe some people have that conception that
if it wasn't for the popularity of blended malts and blends, there wouldn't be a single malt market.
Absolutely.
So they have to be doing something right.
It certainly looks like you guys are. Michael Cochrane has just sent us 3 messages back to back about him now liking peated whiskey. So we've done something right. The last 3 he's tried. This one is right up there with the 2 from Woody at Woodrose of Edinburgh. I don't know if you've tried some of his stuff.
No.
Independent bottler. He's got a Williamson and a Coleland sherry cask. Sublime. He's doing some incredible stuff. So yeah, peated whiskey is coming back. Coming back, it never went away, but peated whiskey is certainly doing some. It's coming back to Michael's palate anyway. But Ronan, thank you very much. It's been great to speak to you. Thanks for coming back and talking about this Virgin Oak series.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolute pleasure to chat, and hopefully we'll see you at the Academy, the Whisky Academy in September. If we get back into GlenAllachie, if you'll allow us back in September, we're fully booked. So
twist a few arms, see if we can get you back in, and I'll come back on in a year's time with the exact same chat and patter.
Just slightly different whiskies.
Yeah, slightly different whiskies. A worse airline.
Cheers, guys, for watching. Everyone at home, I know it's not our usual Thursday night spot. A little bit different to the Blether, which you can catch me on tomorrow with Kat and Leanne Kilmer from Scotch on the Bayou. She'll be joining us. I think she's in Scotland now, so hopefully she's not too jet lagged. She does a whiskey podcast over in America, so join us tomorrow at 7:00 for less focus on this great spirit and probably more havering than anything. Ronan, thank you very much. I'll let you get going. And guys,
thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And good night.
Cheers.
And find the end button.